Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. Glad to have you back for another episode. Thank you for being with us on our 100th episode last week. Thank you for all your support and everything you do for the Dental Wealth Podcast. Glad to have you back, Matthew.
Yeah, we had a great showing last Friday. I mean, a lot of you guys showed great support. We're excited for episode 101 now. You know, we crossed the century mark, so let's keep it going.
Here we now what's the next big goal? Is it 500 or do you celebrate
like 50 now, like every 20, 120, 140.
Every 20 we'll celebrate. That's what we should do. We'll do something like we'll
the
give away
20
something
celebration
every single time. That's right. Matthew, what do we got on the agenda today, buddy?
So I know tax time is a cometh. So, one of the questions that we're getting a lot of clients asking is, where's the money go? I mean, they look at it and they say, the net income shows this, and they're like, I didn't make that. So I know, in your, over the past several years, you worked with thousands of dentists, and you know exactly where the money goes. So my question to you is, where's it going?
Well, it is that time of year where, okay, so I'm shooting this, November-ish, late November, whatever. And so people get with their tax account. I hope you've gotten with your tax CPA. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden someone says, well, you owe $100,000 or 140 or whatever the number is. And people go, where does that money come from? Like, I don't have 140 sitting in cash or whatever that number is. And so, I when you say that, where does the money go? I think the first thing people need to understand, if you're listening to this podcast, this is a good one for you to really write this down. And it's a good thing for you to know this. So when you have net income, mm-hmm. the first place you should be putting money is reinvestment. Now, if you listen to Dental Wealth Podcast, you should know, and mm-hmm. that I say invest in your practice before you put money in the 401k. Always. I was like, always.
I think I've heard it a few times.
Because reinvestment is pre-tax dollars. That's the whole point. The whole point of you reinvesting first. So the number one place you should be putting money is reinvestment. Mm-hmm. Why? Because the number two place is tax. Yeah. That's the thing is once you've reinvested in your practice, now watch, I haven't gotten to debt yet, and here's where people get confused. The first place we go is reinvestment. So we go, okay, I have $100,000 net income. All right, I'm going to reinvest.
Yeah, give me some examples.
So I might reinvest $30,000 into, for instance, a marketing campaign.
So marketing is a reinvestment in dental practice.
Absolutely. It might end up being some type of an equipment. It might end up being a team member. It might be. There's a lot of ways we can reinvest, and if you get an advanced version of this, we could talk through the depreciation models. But ultimately speaking, understand. We want to set money aside for reinvestment. And that's where the mistake happens. And this is where my frustration happens in the dental world because it's being run by financial advisors and CPAs. Mm-hmm. And reinvestment isn't a term that they use. Yeah. And in fact, they skip this whole part and mm-hmm. they go, well, don't reinvest, put the money in a 401k. Now, in a sense, what they're trying to do is to reinvest before taxes, but they're reinvesting in the wrong asset. That's right. They're mm-hmm. reinvesting in the stock market. Right idea, we want to reinvest, but we have an asset doing 30 to 50% return. I'm not going to put it somewhere doing 5%. Mm-hmm. Now, ultimately speaking, if I've maximized the growth of my practice and I've maximized reinvestment and I've maximized the ability to grow, then maybe I would do some type of a qualified fund to reduce that taxation. Mm-hmm. There's a possibility as long as I had the cash to do so. But we have to get through the whole list, right? Yeah. So second is tax, because then we have to pay taxes. And so what ends up happening is we go, okay, $100,000. Well, now I've got to go reinvest. Mm-hmm. Then I pay taxes. But here's the interesting part. I haven't gotten to debt yet. Yeah. And this is where people get confused. Mm-hmm. The debt happens after taxes. Yeah. So if you have, $70,000 of net income, you say, but you've paid $70,000 in debt service, you might say, well, I don't have any money. Yeah. The IRS wants money off of backwards because of the fact that you don't understand that debt actually comes, the principal at least on debt is paid after tax. Mm-hmm. So what ends up happening is you got to pay on that net income, and you actually, now I don't want to overcomplicate because you'll lose people. But in a sense, you go, okay, look, I can look at my financials, realize what my net income is. And then that should actually be cash. And I go, okay, well, I got to reinvest. So I'm going to reinvest some portion of that. Mm-hmm. And then I got to pay my taxes. And then I pay debt. But then the next one's really key. And this is where people got in trouble back in March and April, because the next part is savings.
Yep. Reserves.
You have to have reserves in a business. You have to have reserves. And even if someone was to tell me, like, would you want to fully fund your 401k or have money in reserves? Have money in reserves.
Yeah.
If you don't have money in reserves, or at least have access to capital.
Yeah, you need to have some access.
But if you want to grow, if you want to invest, you got to have reserves. You got to have reserves somewhere. You should have capital investments that you know that are coming up. There's reinvestments in your business that are going to come up. And if you're not aware of those reinvestments, if you haven't plotted those out, then you're going to get in trouble, because either one, you're going to have to take more debt, which I just talked about the problem with that. When you start paying that debt service, yes, you can depreciate the asset, but you're paying that debt service, typically speaking, for a long period of time, even when the depreciation's done oftentimes. And so what ends up happening is people get themselves in trouble, because what ends up happening is that their debt service is so high, and they're not making reinvestments, by the way. They take debt out on capital. I might lose some people here. I'm going to slow it down. I'll lose people. They're taking debt out on capital expenses, not capital investments.
Okay.
Say that again.
Yep.
They're taking out debt on capital expenses, not capital investments. Capital expense is something that's an expense to the corporation, like getting new computers. There's no return on that. Sometimes it's a piece of equipment that they all thought was fancy that the supply rep convinced them to buy, but ultimately had no return. And so then it became a capital expense, but yet they're paying the debt service on that capital expense. Or really bad tax CPAs who tell you to go buy a bunch of things you don't need at the end of the year. Never, ever, ever let the tax tail wag the dog. And then they don't have any savings and accumulation. So ultimately speaking, what happens is, by the way, I haven't gotten to one of the ones that's going to confuse people for a second. And so I'm going to go through this. First thing we do, we reinvest. Then we pay our taxes. Then we pay our debt service. So we go, okay, now I put aside enough money for my taxes. Then I pay my debt service. Then I accumulate savings with that after-tax dollars. And then, and only then, do I distribute. Like, I don't distribute. So when a doctor says, well, I distribute, $180,000, and it's like, well, hold on. Your net income was $180,000. So hold on. So you haven't set aside money for your taxes. You haven't reinvested anything. You have no savings. And technically speaking, like, your debt service hasn't even been paid. And so you're distributing everything that's left over. So what ends up happening is, someone once said to me, the number one thief of a dental practice is the doctor.
And so what they make.
And so what ends up happening with that, and no one take offense to that, but understand that if you don't know the way that this flow of cash flow works, you'll get in trouble. Then ultimately what ends up happening is you get a surprise tax bill. When this surprise tax bill happens, you go, holy moly, where am I going to get this money? Then in a sense, you're in arrears. And now you're trying to take
stressed.
cash and put it somewhere else that it wasn't set upside for. And so we started getting to this trouble. And it's the trouble because of the fact that people don't understand. First of all, CPAs don't tend to explain this to people. Interestingly enough, I was talking to a CPA that I really like, a tax CPA that I think the world of. And we were talking about the fact of, like, tax CPAs don't speak English. And so sometimes when they're speaking, clients are still like, I don't know what he's talking about, because they don't speak business, they speak CPA. And so then it doesn't make sense to the average business owner, and they can't understand why in the world they don't have any, they have to pay taxes when they don't have any money to pay those taxes. And that's because they don't understand where money goes.
And you've explained this before in a few of our events. I want people to understand how big of an issue this is in dentistry. And I want you to tell the story about how, you were talking with that partner at that firm who had this completely backwards, and you showed it to him. Do you remember that?
You're talking about the CPA?
Yes. This is a large partner. He's very successful, one of the largest firms, and you were sitting down and trying to go through this with him, and it was like out of order, or there was something,
Well, I think ultimately speaking, they only left, this is one of the top CPA firms in all of dental, part of the National Association of Dental CPAs. And I looked at their model, their pro forma that they'd given to dentists. And the problem with their model is that they'd only left 3% for reinvestment. And I said, well, if you only have 3% for reinvestment, no wonder the average rate of a dental practice growth is 2.5%. Because what's happening is we're not reinvesting. There is an epidemic of underperformance in the dental industry. Now, private equity solving that. But independent dentists, which is where we're trying to serve, the independent dentists are struggling with this because of the fact that while DSOs, the vast majority of DSOs and private equity held dental corporations are being guided by business principles.
Yep.
Those companies, the independents, are being advised by CPAs that are mostly tax focused and financial advisors. So they're not getting business knowledge. And that's the problem, that even this large CPA firm is telling doctors to take everything out of their dental practice and not reinvest. And then we wonder why dental corporations are growing at such an amazing rate, and that they're coming in. And by the way, why
they're popping up next to you? Why do you think they're popping up next to you?
Why do you think private equity wants in this? Why do you think they're look at this? Why do you think private equity wants in? Because they know that most independent dentists don't know what they're doing. Yeah. They're being advised by people who are not equipped. Not that they're not talented people, but they're not equipped. They don't have the knowledge to do it. And then ultimately speaking, the dentist goes, what the hell's going on? Like, why am I not growing? And then, and I say this over and over again, look, $1.4 million after 30 years in business is not success. Yeah. It's not. Not when you have a recurring patient base. When you have, when you're taking on, I mean, the idea that you're taking on people every 6 months and that just number keeps growing. If you just took care of those people, we'll just do the exponential growth on your hygiene.
I mean, I know people that go to that've seen the same dentist since they were a kid. Like, people don't often, I feel like, switch dentists. So as long as you keep them coming back and you're adding, why wouldn't you?
Well, if you take in 100 new patients a month, I don't care if you take in 50.
Yeah.
But over 6 months, right? And we start to say, okay, well, if it was 300 to 600 new people per year, 6 months is what I'm saying. Yeah. So then a year, we start to say, okay, let's assume we're taking 600 to 1,200 patients in a year. Over 30 years. You should be exploding in growth. Yeah. And by the way,
and you should know why the people, if that's not happening to you, aren't coming back to your dental practice.
That's right.
A lot of times, I don't know. They're like, I don't know why they're not coming back.
So we look at this idea of saying, like, we look at businesses that are failing, and we look around and we say, well, what does Dr. Smith do? And then we allow our businesses to be designed by Dr. Smith, who Dr. Smith is at the same damn problem as you, and it's been happening forever. And then we don't have any leadership training. We don't have leadership training in dental. So what ends up happening is we have small business owners who are in the chair all day long, who are not equipped with the business knowledge, who have no time to deal with the team, who are not equipped with the leadership skills, running around trying to create this business. And God help them, because they really, I mean, it's tough.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. It's so tough to be in a dental chair all day long, get out, deal with expenses and problems, and then try to be a great leader, find out where to invest. Then you get hit by a surprise tax bill. Then your financial advisor's telling you you're not giving them enough money. And then your
team starts leaving. I think that's part of the issue why I see so many phone calls that I have. People say they have problems with their team. I think it's probably because they feel like the lack of leadership in the organization. They don't have anyone to, like, guide them. And it's not to the fault of the dentist. He's in the chair, she's in the chair all day. So it's like a trickle-down effect. We say, compound effect every single time is like little things that happen over a period of time that you don't look at that end up making the big decision.
Yeah, but it's November now, so let's go back down to team again. What's your reinvestment? So right now, what's your reinvestment in 2021 into your team? I'll guarantee I'll line up 1,000 dentists and say, what is your current for 2021
reinvestment strategy?
What is your reinvestment strategy around team? And I'll guarantee you maybe one could give it to me.
Yeah.
I go back and say, okay, what's your capital reinvestment strategy in 2021? And if I had 1,000 dentists, maybe one could give it to me, maybe two.
And they might say computers.
A new cone beam, right? Yeah. And by the way, maybe you use cone beam if it's going to get you a return. Maybe you're doing
you have to look at that, or have someone show you what the breakdown is.
What is your current anticipation around your tax burden in 2021? You should know that. How are you negating that? Don't wait till next November to know that. Know that in 2020, what you're anticipating, because you should know what your anticipated tax bill is, believe it or not, in 2021. You should already know it now. Hell, the government made you set aside payments quarterly because they've already anticipated it. If the federal government, now here's the problem with clients I work with. It's that their tax CPA will tell them just take whatever you did last year and then do it by 1.1, which is 10%, right? 10% growth. And so I'm like, that's not going to work with me. Like, it's not enough. So when we look at this thing is say, look, ultimately speaking, as a business owner, you have to know where money goes. It's crucial. You have to have a reinvestment strategy. It's crucial. You have to know right now exactly why you need to take what you need to take, and it's okay. What we got to do is go, by the way, I'm not saying to take a pay cut. So when someone hears this, go, well, Eric, if I did all that, where's my distribution? No, that's where we set goals. My biggest problem with goals is that people go, well, I did $1 million last year, so I'll do 1.4 this year, or whatever it is. And I go, no, that's not what you do. You say, okay, I need $150,000 from a capital standpoint. That means at my profit margin, I need to make $500,000. Okay, well, how do we make $500,000 increase revenues? How many new patients do I need, or how many patients do I need? What's my investment in marketing around that? What team members am I going to need? What's my investment around that? Am I increasing average revenue per patient? And so do I need new things like a cone beam? What's my capital investment in that? Am I going to use strategic debt around any of those purchases? Those are the things we should know now. So when I sit down with somebody right now, I want to look at 2021 and say, what is my capital investment needs? Now, also, is there any surplus that's needed? Are we going to be trying to buy a building? Are we going to? So we have to look at all those things now. And so what happens is we're not flying blind. We walk into 2021. By the way, it's November. So if you're waiting until 2021 to get started in 2021, you are 3 months behind the curve.
You're going to start in March.
I mean, so then you're waiting, and then all of a sudden you have spring break happens, and then before you know it, 2 months later, summer's coming, and then people want to take vacation, and then before you know it, school's back in, and then the damn year's over, and you're like, why am I not there?
Holidays again.
Well, you're not there because you're not focused on what you need to be focused on. So ultimately speaking, it's one of the reasons we do a foundation workshop, in December, because it's like, if you're not ready, how are you going to take off? So the people that are like, that have scarcity mindset and say, well, no, I just don't want to spend any money. Let me tell you what, if you do not know this strategy, if you're not paying to understand the strategy, then you're susceptible to the negative consequences of this, because then you go back and go, well, let me ask my tax CPA. Here's the problem. Your tax CPA does not know.
Nope.
They don't know. And so it's like...
Neither does your advisor.
That's right. I mean, I was just sitting with a financial advisor this morning. The foggiest clue about business reinvestment, nor should they, by the way.
I mean, you were at that point. I mean, you had your Series 6, Series 7, all those licenses, but you knew how to invest back into a dental practice, but you knew the industry as a whole didn't know how to reinvest back in dental practice.
I think what ends up happening is, staying on the tax subject is this, when one of the reasons I got investment license was to understand what the advisors were trying to move people into. And understanding when you know that, to say, look, the advisors are good people, they just don't understand business. Yeah. The CPAs are good people, they just don't understand business. You need a great tax CPA. You need a great advisor. But then you understand where they go. So the first thing you have to say is, if you're listening to this podcast right now and you don't have a reinvestment strategy for 2021, you need to pick up the phone and you need to call me, or you need to call someone who can solve this for you. Because if you don't have a team around you to help you with this, then you got a problem. If you don't know what your current tax situation is for 2021, then you've got to pick up the phone and get that resolved. If you don't have a saving strategy, if you don't know why,
if you feel like you were surprised about your tax bill this year, you definitely need to call.
Well, I mean, look, this isn't, this podcast isn't designed to, this is designed to put content out. Now, it's not to move to someone to a service or anything, but you better call somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, look, what are you going to do? Are you going to sit back and hope for the different results? You got to do something about it. So ultimately speaking, when I think about something like this, I go, look, you got to understand where money goes. You got to understand what that order looks like. And then you have to have a strategy in each one of these. And then if you do that, though, here's the great news. By doing that, then you'll know why to set the goal you want to set. Yep. By doing that, you'll be able to hit the goals you want to hit. By doing that, you'll have an accumulation of capital. By doing that, you won't get surprised by your tax bill. By doing that, you'll be able to take your family on vacation. By doing that, you'll be able to get an associate or another associate. By doing that, you'll be able to get another location. By doing that, you'll be able to invest in all kinds of investment accounts and those types of things. By doing this strategy, then you'll be able to do it. And if you don't, well, then you're doomed to be like everybody else and be susceptible to it. And ultimately speaking, we might have adversity anyhow. I mean, we've got a new administration coming in. We don't know what that's going to look like. And so we have to be really on top of this. I mean, by all means, this might not be a pro-business administration. We don't know that. So we have to be on top of this type of thing so that we can't sit back passively and watch. We have to be active in what we do. So it's extremely important for us to do that. So I would say I'm kind of on a long way.
Just to recap. So net income, we go reinvestment, tax, debt, reserves, distributions.
That's right.
Okay.
And if you do that, then you're going to know where the money's going. And if you do that, then you'll be able to follow through.
I think it'll reduce the stress. I mean, every single time I get on a phone call, people are like, yeah, I'm stressed. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why they call is they've gotten to a point, and is if they follow this simple philosophy, that could help relieve some of the stress.
Yes.
Just following the philosophy.
You have to get education around it. I think there has to be a plan based on it.
Yeah.
But if you get this down, then all of a sudden you're like, I've got this down, and I know where to put money, and I know why I'm putting money where I'm putting money. And then it actually drives you to go do something. When you get in the chair, it actually will drive you to know what your result is versus just working your ass off every day and hoping to eventually get out of a hole. Like, you're actually knowing why you're doing what you're doing, which is so powerful, so important, and it'll make all the difference. So that's where money goes, and that's how you don't get surprised by a tax bill. It's how you don't get surprised by not having enough capital, and it's how you don't go massively into debt.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Well,
net income. Hopefully that wasn't too far over anybody's head. I think you broke it down in layman's terms. I mean, I tell people all the time, you just have to know when the money comes into practice, where's it going to go?
That's right.
And I think, you do a great job explaining with your high net worth clients. When you meet with your clients that are doing the $6 to $10 million mark, this is what you talk about. These are like the concepts all right, we need to figure out strategically where's the money going to go, because these clients are looking to buy multiple locations, looking to invest in outside opportunities, other real estate opportunities, things like that. But they all know this formula. They know an exact percentage, and you give them that percentage on what they need to reinvest, how much they need to put away for taxes, for debt. Part of the reason why some of our clients, they pay off their houses so quickly is because they know exactly how to use this formula to do that.
Yeah, our average client pays off their personal home in 3 years.
Yeah.
Multi-million-dollar building in 5 to 6. It's how do we get people's homes paid off so quickly? How do we get people out of debt? Well, it's true. It's understanding this and not getting surprised. Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. So we've officially then hit 101.
101. So we've crossed the century mark. This is exciting. We got a new set for you guys. We introduced this at the live stream last Friday. So mix it up a little bit, add a little flavor to it.
Well, we'll probably change it 15 times before the 200 episodes. So.
Maybe that's what we do. Every 10 we change it. So it's like 10
See
more.
if you're watching or something, right? We'll have like a set quiz show. But thanks everybody for listening. Look, one of the things that's starting to happen is, you're starting to move through YouTube. Like I said, one of the things I asked a few weeks back was like, hey, do me a favor and just go to, so many of you, I see the numbers. I pulled the numbers up on my phone, and so I see the amount of listens. Do me a favor, go into your phone, go to YouTube, and hit subscribe. That's just a personal favor. I do think you should see the video version of this, because I think you see people's facial expressions. It's completely different. Mm-hmm. If you don't see someone's facial expressions, you're losing a large portion of what's coming through. So, and you might not listen to it, always watch it, but at least have the ability to get notifications when it pops through. So do me a favor, go to YouTube, hit subscribe. And I always tell you, like the concept, like the things that we talk about in here, these are all like action items. So make sure you have your partner. Make sure you have your Dental Wealth podcast partner. Yep. The person you're sharing these concepts with, talking with, and going through all this content with. Because if you take this content and you actually know how to implement this, it'll make a crazy amount of difference. So thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.